Welcome to the Totally Awesome Fishing Show, beach fishing tips. That's what this one's going to be. Now, it's not really a sort of proper fishing trip, this one. I'm actually down waiting for the tides on another mark further up the coast. And I'm kicking around, I'm waiting for a night tide, and I'm thinking, do you know what, I'll go down and look at one of these big boulder strewn beaches. Now, I'm on the North Somerset coast at the west end, close to Minehead. Town's just back up in there. So it's always worth fishing, but of course when you turn up at a new venue, even freshwater, I've had this so many times, just fish by the third tree on the left. Yeah, great, well I've done that a few times. I've fished by the fifth tree, I've fished by the ninth tree, and then you tell them why you didn't catch anything, they go, oh, I didn't mean that tree, I mean that tree. You know, you need to be very explicit. And of course when you're on a beach like this, looking at it from high water, you don't actually know where the sand begins and where the boulders are. You can see where the boulders are, and all along this coastline, big boulders, you will not be getting your tackle back if you drop it in there. You will not be getting grip leads, grapnels, plane bombs, nothing's coming back in this lot. You cast out from up high water, so you need to be walking down over these rocks, getting as low down as you can, so you're casting your baits out onto clean sand. But of course, there's lots of little tips here, guys, and this is what I intend doing today. While I'm waiting for the tide up there, I shall throw a line out. Probably won't catch anything. Bright, blazing blue sky, flat calm sea, but hey ho, let's crack on and give you guys out there a few totally awesome beach tips. Okay guys, I'm not using the big camera because I couldn't be bothered to lug it all the way down here. I've also used my tiny little baby camera, put it all up on the tripod, switched it on, and it says, sorry, no memory card. Well, I can't go all the way back to the car, so I'm using a little small little helicopter camera at the moment, so it won't be great sound, going to get a bit of wind noise, but whatever. So here's the big boulders. Right now, one thing to remember is these boulders, when wet in the rain, are very slippery. If you've got Wellingtons, you're going to be even more chance of breaking an ankle. So you've got to tread on them very, very carefully and watch exactly where you're treading. We'll start at the top there. Now you can see way up the top there that it's bone dry with the sun, and you can see the high water mark where it's slightly darker. So that should tell you actually where the tide comes up to. Obviously I know that because I've been here waiting for it to go down. If you turn up and you see that line, you know that's going to be the high water mark, plus you can look at weeds as well. So down here, just at the big boulders, just be careful where you're putting your foot all the time. Try and look for, if you can, flat ones like this, so you get a good, even that, look, it's rocking, that's a nice flat one, it's rocking. If you get your foot jammed down inside, right down inside there, you can get broken ankle. If you're on your own, tide's coming in, bad news guys. Now another little tip, looking at it, is if you come around here, another little tip here guys, is just look where the barnacles start, okay? So now if you follow down these barnacles all the way down to the edge of the water as the tide's going out, it gives you a rough idea, I think, of the neap and the spring tides. Now the difference between a neap tide and a spring tide. Spring tides on very, very big tides, there's a lot of movement in the water, it goes out a very long way, it comes back, well, equally as much, if not further. A neap tide is a very small movement tide, it doesn't go in and out very far, okay? Generally fishing is better on a spring tide from the shore because there's more movement of water, but of course you've got to take into account lots of other things like the weed flow, the tide itself pulling on the line, dragging your bait and you grip it out of position. So if you follow these barnacles down, so this is just my totally awesome tip, just follow the barnacles down. When you get a lot of barnacles, I tend to think that that is possibly the sort of neap tide area where they don't get uncovered very much. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, now here for instance you can see absolutely loads and loads of barnacles. So we're getting down there, but look at the state the barnacles have done to the leather on my shoe there. Absolutely, wifey will not like this, it's just torn and scratched the leather. Now that's another reason, if you have a slip and you fall over, you're going to cut your hand. Now, little pointer again, that you know this is an area that gets covered by water. There is a slipper limpet. That's fixed on there, but that tells me, you know, that's not drying out at all at high water. That's always going to be covered at high water. It's not dried all the time. If it's dry all the time, these guys can't live there. They need to be covered by salt water to feed, obviously. So that tells you the water's going to come up over here. Don't put all your gear down here on a big tide, because it's going to get covered over. That's a little tip. And also a good bait for wrasse as well. Now another tip down here is where the bladderwrack, where the weed grows. I'm moving in here. Here's the first sign, just past those limpets, of the weed growing there. So you can see all the weed that's growing there. And there we say, look, underneath the weed, there's limpets, so you know we're getting down towards where the low water mark is. Now down here in the Bristol Channel they get a lot of silt in suspension. Now this also tells me here, looking down here, can you see all this down here? As we move further up the top, it doesn't dump the silt so much, but as we get lower down, it's starting to turn into a silty area, and it's getting deposited around the stones. Now eventually this will turn into total beach, and that's what we want to be casting our baits over. Right guys, I'm moving down even more, and yes, here the tide is about 3 hours down now, and look how it suddenly all just turns into sand. Now possibly I could have started fishing a little bit earlier, but then there's obviously other outcrops here that you can see down here. Although there's sand all in this area, the rocks are still going out there. So I believe that line of the rocks on the edge where the water is now is about the edge of the rock. So any time from here down, casting out there is going to be good for rays, dogfish, bass, codling, who knows what's out there. That's what fishing's all about. But another tip, where are you going to set up, guys? Well, listen, the last thing you want to do is get down to low water here with a fast moving tide, and you put your gear here, because you're going to have to keep moving it back all the time. So you want to find somewhere that's sort of in between the two. Now I'm going back up here. I've already chucked a couple of rods out just in case, because I knew I'd be down low, and you can see I set up there. Okay, so I just set up so that I could still go down if I wanted to, but you know, the rods are way up out the water, it's no problem, they're not going to snag in anything. But I haven't got to keep going up and down all the time. And remember, as I get pushed further back up the beach, when the tide comes in, as I get pushed further in, obviously I'm going to have to move my gear back. But the other side is, I'm also going to have to cast even further to reach that sand. Once I lose one set of gear, I'm off, because the tide will push me out, I won't get the distance, my lead's going to fall into those rocks. Snag city, guys. Right, you've got right down to where you want to fish. There's boulders everywhere. You don't want to put all your gear down and start getting out boxes of swivels, boxes of hooks. Try and make your rigs up before you actually start fishing. It makes it a lot easier on these boulder strewn beaches. And of course, if you drop anything down, including your car keys, and it has happened, into these rocks at night, kiss them goodnight, you'll never be able to find them again. But what you can do is make yourself a little flat area around here. Just find somewhere with not too big of boulders, and you can clear them and toss them all away, get them out of the way, make yourself a little platform somewhere flat to put everything. Now you can see down there, people, I've made a nice little flat area where I can put my gear if I want to, and it's much easier. I won't be falling over and tripping over all the time. Also, the other thing you do is this, a nice little tip that not many people think about. The beach is going to be draining all the time, so find yourself a little trickle where the beach is draining down still. Throw a few loose stones out like this. People think, what on earth is that man doing now? I'll tell you what I'm making. Can anybody guess? Can anybody guess yet? Who's guessing what it is? Let that clear, let the sediment clear. And, do you know what that is? That makes a nice little washing pool for my hands after I've baited up. That is a totally awesome tip. So I'm going to make a little camp here. This sand up here is going to be drying out. Put my gear there, I'm not going to trip over all the time. I'm near my rods up there. I can see all my rods out there, and I've got a hand wash as well. Almost all mod cons. Okay guys, tip when casting in fast tides. Don't just cast either a plain bomb or your grip lead straight out in front of you. If this is going as I'm looking at it here, this way from right to left, which it is ebbing, it's going to be dragging the grip lead straight out of position. It's going to be pushing on that line. You're better to walk 20 or 30 yards up here, go up further up the beach, cast out there. As soon as the grip hits, open the bail arm, free spool the multiplier if you're using a multiplier, then a belly of line go in there, and that will pull those grip wires in. The pressure of the water will then go up the line rather than against it here. It's going up the line, and you get two types of bites. If you get something like a bass, it's going to hammer down, it's going to hook itself, pulling against the grip lead. If you get a bigger fish like a ray or a cod, it's going to come up like this, pick the bait up as it drops back down tide. It's going to pull that grip lead out. That in turn is going to make your line fall slack, is what we call a slack liner. Don't just stand there looking at it. Crank up quick, get tight to it. Don't even really need to set the hook, he's going to be on there anyway. And that's what you do. So you're going to get two types of bites here, but cast up tide, belly a line in the water, then put it in your rod rest. So it goes straight out, but it curves up. That's what it's doing, it's curving up. Another little tip, you've made your little base camp there, you've got to cut some bait up, find yourself a flat rock, put the flat rock down nice and level, and then you can cut your bait up on top of that, and you don't lose all the bait down between the cracks of the rock. Little tip here, when you're cutting on the rock you're going to blunt your knife. You could bring a piece of wood down if you wanted, but if you use the very tip, you sharpen it and use the very tip, you can generally find you can trim up these baits like this on your little homemade bait table. It's all about organisation, especially when you're fishing on your own. Just use the tip of the blade and just run it across the top like that, and then the only bit you blunt will be the very, very tip, and you get some nice strips like this. Now, if you've got worms in hot weather, and it's hot today, don't just leave them laying in the sun like this. They're going to dry out. In fact, any bait will. What you want to do is wrap them up in the paper and keep changing the paper, and just tuck them in a little area of shade. You can even build some by putting your rocks up like this, look, just to make a bit of shade. You put your bait in there, more especially worms, but also stuff like squid. If you've got squid there, get them up here in the shade. And what I do is, you should really use a white towel, soak it in seawater, and just gently wring it out first, get all the moisture out, just lay it on the top, keep your bait cool, because we all know clean, fresh bait should catch your fish. A guy recently wrote in, he said, he's some casting, distance casting buff. I used to use a multiplier years ago, too many snarl ups, used to cast, I don't know, 150 on a field, no great shakes. He said, Graeme, you cast like a girl. I said, well, maybe. What I say is, cast like a girl, but catch like a man. And just remember, distance isn't everything. A lot of the fish you will cast over if you cast too far. It has its places. 90% of the time, Joe Average can catch you. Throw in 80, 90 yards, all you need, guys. This one's for the guy that says I couldn't cast very far. Oh, I love it, mate. I don't need to. Cod in the bag. Thank you very much, Mr. 80-yard cast. That's all that was. Lovely little codling. On a bonus, I'm only waiting for the tide to pull on my real fishing mark, and yet I've come up on ragworm. Nice codling. Do you know what? What a day. Hard fishing, obviously, but is it hard fishing? You have to ask yourself. Fish like this, come on guys, get out there. Let's get it back in the water. Okay, well let me show you what it's changed from. I've just called that codling, small codling, but just look, that's what we were looking at from the high water mark. Would you have known this beautiful white beach is down there, just 3 hours down, low tide, so you can see, you can fish all the way here, clean ground, not going to lose any gear, bar the odd boulder, obviously there will be out there, but basically what's happened is it's broken down, the beach has gone from all these boulders, you can see the line right down there, straight as you like, and back the other way, and of course other guys down there now moved in fishing because they don't want to lose their gear. So here's the tip, just look for that demarcation line where the boulders stop, the beach begins, because you could look at this at high water and think it's totally unfishable. Wrong. You need to check out everywhere at low water to see where you're casting into. That's a totally awesome tip. I can't wait to get down my other mark. Tell you what, this one's not been bad with the codling already. Well everybody, it's dead slack water at the moment. I think it might just have turned, but it's slowed right up, and there's only one thing that you have to do with a very small mind like me to pass the time now. It's just got to be done. Wow, what about this, people? A turbot of all things. I've got a turbot on the beach, just a practice session there, giving you guys some tips. And then I've got a nice little turbot. Just look at that, and look at the size of his mouth there. Engulf that ragworm. I'm running out, I'm using just dead ragworm at the moment. He has got an enormous mouth. Just look at it there. Can you see that? I don't know if you're going to see that because it's a guesswork camera. No idea what comes out, and there it is. Fantastic session. Hope you got some tips. It shows you I've got cod, I've got whiting. Not big, I know, but a bit of fun, and it shows you. It's just giving you tips. Get out there, make use of those tips, and have some totally awesome fishing.